Hello. I think we can start. Okay. Okay, dear ladies and gentlemen, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are. We are excited to start our second webinar titled, What is a National Implementation Plan? And this is a second part of the webinar we had more than 2 weeks ago. And today we continue exploring the structure of NIPS and its chapters, and we'll review interlinkages with national reporting, guidance, documentation, and methodologies relevant to NIP, and use of, I apologize, we have some interruption in the French channel. We will highly appreciate if our French interpreters fix this. And we will also review the use of integrated electronic toolkit to support NIP data organization, submission, and use. And before we start, let me first of all express our deep gratitude to the participating parties, to the participating countries. Just a moment, it seems we have some interruption in the French channel. Okay, I apologize. So it looks like it works okay. I apologize for that. So we are pleased to introduce our honorable guests. Ms. Mihaela Claudia Pon, Program Management Officer from UNEP Chemicals and Health Branch. She's representing Components 1 and 2 Global NIP Update Project, as well as we were happy to hear from our project country, from Zambia, and to the best of our knowledge, they volunteered to share their experience with NIP. And though we haven't yet seen them on the panel, if anyone from Zambia is on this webinar, please feel free to reach out to us and in the chat box. If you want to present still, we will promote you to the panelists. And just a quick reminder, today we have 6 outstanding interpreters at our service, providing Spanish, French, and Russian interpretation. So please feel free to click the interpretation button in the bottom of the screen. It's an icon which looks like a globe, and select your language. We are also recording this webinar, and we'll be producing 4 video records in English, Spanish, French, and Russian languages, which we will send out to you and to the regional centers by the email which you indicated when registered to this webinar, together with the materials presented today. It seems we are ready. Once again, my apologies for the technical issue. And therefore, let me give the floor to Melanie Ashton, Project Coordinator of Component 4 of Global NIP Update Project, which is led by GGKP. Floor is yours, Melanie.
Thanks, Anastasia, and welcome everyone today to part 2 of our first webinar on what is NIP. Thank you very much, Mihaela, for taking the time to be here again. We're excited to continue. For those of you that were here last time, we got about halfway through and we're essentially picking up from where we left off. So if you are new to these webinars, please note that you can watch the first half of the webinar afterwards. The other thing I'd like to remind everyone of is that we have the Green Forum as a place that this project and the countries across the globe that are involved in this project have an opportunity to communicate with each other. So we had about 75 participants in our last webinar, and we have 32 people signed up to the Green Forum NIP update group so far. So we're thinking that some of you didn't sign up or forgot to sign up. So my colleague Jovita will drop the link to sign up in the chat. We will keep asking you to do this because really, as we share information and resources and knowledge in the NIP update project, we really are using the Green Forum to do this. And this is also the only opportunity inside of the project that countries have to hear from each other on an ongoing basis. So please do make the most of this opportunity. The group's not so active at the moment, but as we all join, it will become more active. So I also note that by the end of this year, we'll be making the Green Forum, moving it into something that we sometimes joke is like an unsexy Facebook. We'll be moving it into an app version. So it'll be downloadable on your phone, and means that there'll be more of a social aspect, and it'll be faster to use. So please do bear with us while we improve the technology. But if you do have a moment in the meantime, we'd really appreciate if you'd sign up to the NIP update group on the Green Forum. So Jovita has dropped that into the chat. Jovita, I see it's just gone to hosts and panelists, so pop it into everyone if you can. And with that, I hand you back to Anastasia and wish you the best for the webinar. And we hope that people will take the time to drop some questions in the chat. We will have time for Q&A at the end of Mihaila's presentation. So we look forward to an interactive exchange. Thanks, Anastasia, back to you.
Thank you very much, Melanie, for your greetings. And also thank you for reminding everyone about our community of practice and Green Forum. I believe we have shared the links in the chat box, and we are glad to introduce our next speaker. It is Mihaela Claudia Pon. I believe you know her quite well, and you have met her. Many of you met her before. Mihaela Claudia Pon has actually conducted NIP for her country a couple of times for Romania. So she has extensive practical experience. She shall continue her presentation, which was partially presented in our last webinar. And due to the time limits, we were not able to cover the whole part. So she will cover the remaining part on the structure of NIP and its chapters. And in the second session, she will introduce us to the linkage between NIP and national reporting, which are Articles 7 and Articles 15 of Stockholm Convention, use of integrated electronic toolkit. And finally, in the end, we will also have a chance to review the methodologies, reports available and necessary for NIP review and update. So floor is yours, Mihaela.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Anastasia, for introducing me such, such nice introduction from your side. So thank you so much. So yes, indeed, I'm coming as most of the participants here from with my government experience and perspective within this new role. So I hope I will be able to share as much as possible from the experience, from my own experience, national one, but also from international experience working with different countries in supporting their NIP development review and update. So let me, I think I will close my video. I think it's easier to preserve the bandwidth. And let me share my presentation. So please let me know when you see it.
We can see that, Mihaela.
Yeah, so I'm trying. I don't know. Do you see notes as well? I don't know.
No, we don't see notes, but we see the
okay.
next slide. I think if you push that one next to
Okay.
the one with the cross through it, you should be able to.
Okay. Okay, so maybe just to put everything in the context. So for those of you that were not taking part at the last webinar, so we started introducing how the NIP structure looks like, and I describe it the structure. So mainly we have three main chapters: introductory, one Second one relates to the situation on POPs at the national level, and third one it's on the relevant action plans that need to be developed and put forward in order to support country in the planning and management of POPs nationally. So we are at the phase of describing a bit more about what goes in this chapter 2 related to the POPs inventories, and we are left with this chemical. So we have gone through pesticides, PCB, pentachlorophenol, another pesticides for which we have guidance documents, and also bromodiphenyl ethers. And this is just a brief overview on these chemicals because they are new, and they are to be addressed by EU countries in the process of the NIP update. So in terms of hexabromocyclodedecan, I think what is important for you to know, it is listed under Annex A with specific exemption for production and use in expanded polystyrene and extruded polystyrene in buildings. So that was the initial listing. But here I need to highlight that according to the convention specification, there is no registration for specific exemptions allowed anymore. And let me explain a bit why I'm saying this. So as you know, according to paragraph 3 of Article 4 of the Stockholm Convention, parties may register for specific exemptions or acceptable purposes under Annexes A and B. But there is a difference between specific exemptions and acceptable purposes that you need to understand. So the one that are that are limited by time, meaning 5 years maximum, are the specific exemptions. So once a substance is listed and the amendment it enters into force, so it's 1 year since the listing when it entering into force, you have 5 years when you can use that specific exemption. So in case of hexabromocyclododecan, the 5 years passed, and because there was no other registration made in this sense by other parties in order to for the COP to consider to extend this exemption, now there is no registrations could be made in this sense. So although initially was listed with an exemption, now because there is no party registered anymore for this exemption, no other registration will be allowed. So this is for you to understand. So in terms of what are the objectives that you need to focus during the inventory. So for those that were present, we have this frame that we are using in this webinar. So you may see this for other chemicals. So this way of presenting the objectives. So it's to look into the production, use, import, export as related to HBCD, then also consider information on stockpiles and waste, not least on the legal and institutional framework at the country level. So if you have this substance regulated already, or if not, you need to record this and considering when you are putting together your action plan. And of course, identify any remaining gaps in terms of data collection and so on, but also look for the contaminated sites, if any. So now, if we are to move, so you remember that in chapter 2, we have different sections where we need to input the information on different POPs, so qualitative and quantitative. So when it comes to the quantitative one, I have summarized here, and you will see this type of table for other chemicals. So I have summarized here what the data needs are per different life cycle step of the chemical. And what you see here on the right side, so where there is a connection with the reporting obligation, as in this case, Article 15 report, it is marked just for you to know that when you collect this data, you know, the outcomes of the data collection will also could be used for reporting. So in case of HPCD, what do you need to have to look for? So if it was produced or not, right? If then on the import export, there are two aspects. So import of the chemical as such, so as powder or as pellets, or master batches and so on, or imported through different products. In this case, EPS and XPS, but also different textile applications that require flame retardant characteristics, right? And then on the use is the same part, same thing. So use of substance as such, but also different articles containing HBCDs that for which you need to collect information. And then here we have also the recycling part. This is sometimes happening. So if you need to double check if this is the case in your country, and if so, gather some information on what is, I mean, how much it is recycled, if there are any other article or products produced by recycled materials, and so on and so forth. And then, of course, waste part, if there are any stockpiles, and maybe if we look at the EPS and XPS, it's the construction and demolition type of waste that you may need to check and look. And then, okay, so then we have another chemical, so hexachlorobutadiene. So this one is listed in Annex A without any exception, and of course in Annex C as an intentional POPs. And I will explain. For example, when it comes to intentional production of ACBD, this was done to be used, I mean, in agriculture as pesticides, or in industrial manufacture, like in open or semi-closed applications, like for synthesis of different rubber compounds, or manufacture of lubricants, or chlorofluorocarbons. So, and the purification of gas stream. But what is important to notice here about HCBD is that the unintentional production is higher than the intentional one. So intentional one, it was around 14,000 tons, but unintentional is much higher. And when I'm talking about unintentional production, this comes from mainly from the production of tetrachloroethylene, trichloroethylene, carbon tetrachloride, sorry, and chlorine production. So if, I mean, you, before you start your inventory, you need to do a very quick desk review and understand if you have any of these processes and industrial activities going on in your country. If so, then you move forward. If not, I think this chemical will not be of interest in your case. So although we have all these listed chemicals, you need to review carefully to which of them are of most relevance for your country context, and then pursue with the inventory. Going every direction and for every POP, it is not very efficient, both like in terms of using human and financial resources. So you need to do a bit of pre-assessment before you go into inventory work. So in this case, are the same objectives, just that the subject of the inventory now is ACBD, so I will not repeat this. And then again, you have here a summary of what type of quantitative data you need to look for. So because I was saying that highest production happen from unintentional release, so you need to look for the byproducts, right? That could have been used, in agricultural sector, industrial manufacturing, and so on, and for potential products articles containing ACBD. But as I said, you need to pre-assess this before going into this inventory. And then, yes, use waste part and contaminated sites, if any. Then, if we move to the polychlorinated naphthalines, so they are listed in Annex A with specific exemptions for the use in the production of polyfluorinated naphthalines, including octafluoronaphthalene, but also in Annex C as a unintentional POP. So what you need to understand about PCN, so they replaced PCB in some applications. They were replaced, by PCB in some applications, and afterwards PCB were replaced by ACCP, short chain chlorinated paraffins, and I will talk about a bit later. So you see here we have a long chain of regrettable substitutions. One replaced the other, and it seems that they were having the same POPs characteristics. So these are the PCNs that are subject to the Stockholm Convention. So before you start your inventory, just stay focused on the PCNs that make the subject to the Stockholm Convention. So basically, the use of PCNs, for example, as additive in chloroprene, rubber, happen only by the year 2000. But since 2000, the production is assumed to have ended, with the exception of PCN as an intermediate for the production of PFNs. And as far we are aware, Russia is only country that is registered for such an exemption. So major uses of PCNs or cable coating, rubber, paints, sealants, lubricants, but also capacitors. So usually the PCN containing products has had short service lives, and with this in mind, it is very likely that the largest number of these products have already been disposed. However, when it comes to these long-term uses, like outdoor application, like sealants in buildings or outdoor paints and capacitors that may contain some PCN, they may still be present. So one recommendation is that this is addressed together in an inventory with PCB as well. So for you to keep in mind that you may group this with PCB, and for some open application with short chain chlorinated paraffins as well. So the objective of the inventory is, I will not repeat it. So look at the production, use, import, export, stockpile, waste, contaminated site, but also if there is any legal institutional framework at the country level to deal with the substance. And then quantitative data to be generated. So again, the two aspects, so substance as such, produced to be used as an intermediate, or PCN, or in articles products. So I think for the close application, it's maybe a bit easier to do it. When it comes to open application, we all know that we are still facing, we struggle a lot, even in case of PCB, which they were listed long time ago, but there is not much available data globally about the presence and existence globally in open applications. So yeah, this is a bit difficult to deal with it. Then when it comes to short chain chlorinated paraffins, so they are listed in Annex A with specific exemptions. And I omitted to mention also in case of PCNs and also SCCP, the exemptions are still valid. So because there are still countries registered for these exemptions. So for example, if you identify that your country may need to register as well, you are still allowed. So the register is still open. So as you see here, there are several type of exemptions for production in use as additives in production of the transmission belts and synthetic rubber. Those rubber belts in mining industry, or rubber conveyor belts in forestry industry. Then in leather industry, so this was used for so-called fat liquoring in leather. So that means that, for example, during the the leather goes to this tanning process, right? And the animal natural fats are removed because they cannot be preserved, so they need to be removed, otherwise they become rancid. So to obtain a soft and stable leather, it is a must to be regreased. So then they use this short chain chlorinated paraffins for that. Okay, so then yeah, what is important also to mention is that SCCP can be found as impurities in medium chain chlorinated paraffins, so those that start from carbon 14 to carbon 18 chain length. And if the SCCP content in this medium chain chlorinated paraffin is above 1%, then this mixture is considered also a POP. So therefore, when you go into the inventory work, also look at medium chain and long chain paraffins to assess and analyze. But what is very, difficult here is that in this case, monitoring and analysis is needed to make this distinction and determine what is the concentration and determine if it is a POP or not, and if it needs to be managed. So the thing is that this analysis can be done only by few labs around the world, because they are very complicated and sensitive. So that is the major shortcoming in this case. So yeah, so this is for paraffin. So again, objectives of the inventories follow the same pattern. So for quantitative data, I think there is a particular importance to look both production but also article products containing it. And there are some, for example, HH codes already for some products containing CCPs that you can use and screen through the international databases to gather some information. So because also I didn't mention that not all the POP substances have HH codes, so sometimes it's very difficult to track when it comes to import, export, and so on. And for example, in the next webinar, we are planning to introduce to you some overview of different POPs or POPs containing articles that have HH codes that will very much simplify your work when it comes to retrieving data about POP. So that will be the subject of future webinars for us to go more in depth. And then I'm moving to PFOA. So now we'll have we'll start with PFOA, and then we go with PFHX, and then with PFOS. So this is the group of perfluorinated chemicals. So PFOA, it is listed in Annex A of the convention with specific exemptions, and they are listed here. So there are few exemptions that are really common to all three: PFOA, PFHX, and PFOS. For example, firefighting foams and textiles. So these are relevant for all three, but also metal plating if we look at PFOS and PFHX. So and firefighting foams, I'm talking about those that apply for Class B fires. So Class B fires are those type of fires that of different flammable liquids or gases, right? Like propane or natural gas or gasoline and kerosene. And sometimes some plastics going on fire are classified as Class B fires. So therefore, these firefighting foams cannot be used for all type of fires, but only Class B. So this is the exemption into the convention. And yes, in case of PFOA, it is used for the manufacture of polytetrafluoroethylene and polyvinyl ethane. Okay. So this I will not repeat. Anyway, you will receive the presentation and you can go through yourself. So are the same steps that you need to follow. And then quantitative data with the linkages to the reporting. For PFOA, so the specific exemptions are still valid. So I think we need to pay attention to this while doing the inventory to understand if you have this in use and if you need to register for a specific exemption with the secretariat, which I think is very important. And then perfluorohexansulfonic acid, yes, from the same family, that it has no specific exemptions, but as I mentioned, these compounds can be used as effective surfactants or surface protectors. So they have been used intentionally in firefighting foams, metal plating, as I was saying, as finishes for textile, leather, and upholstery, polishing agents, and cleaning and washing agents, and so on. So these are few elements. Yes. So again, I will keep this one. So please try to focus, and my recommendation is that that because all these perfluorinated compounds are related, and we see that there were common uses of it, you can when doing your inventory, you can group the three and have a more integrative approach while reaching the industry sector or different facilities and so on and so forth. So yeah, so I will not detail this because it's the same story. Then PFOS, as I was saying, so this PFOS is listed in Annex B, means it is restricted, and it has two remaining specific exemptions. So metal plating for hard metal plating only in closed loop systems, and for firefighting foam again for class B. And then PFOS has also an acceptable purpose, which is as a pesticide for against insect bites, namely through this compound sulfuramide. So this has no time limit. So there are registered parties, if I remember correctly, that they are still using the substance against insect bites. And yes, so closed loop system, maybe to explain a bit what it means that, for example, there is the rinse water effluent that you use when doing different work in the metal plating industry, and this you add to avoid and you add PFOS to avoid as a wetting agent, like to avoid metal to become hot and then be in trouble. So then there is water that rinses. It's used to rinse the different metal objects under the metal plating. So then this may contain PFOS, and instead of going as a wastewater, it is recirculated and reused in the same process. Therefore, the wastewater quantity resulted it's lower, and then the contamination with PFOS it's lower. And PFOS also was used as additive for hydraulic fluids, especially in the air flight control systems. So to reduce the erosion of different aircraft parts. So that is another major use when it comes to PFOS. Yes. Okay. So then the objective of the inventory is the same. Now maybe we focus on the specific exemptions if there are relevant for your country or not, if you need to register, and maybe the main focus should be firefighting foams, checking with your firefighting department or different airports, or in case you have refineries or chemical, I mean oil industry, oil and gas industry, you may want to check, or mining industry. So in that case, you may find that this has been used as surfactant, as so please have in mind that. Then when it comes to quantitative data, again, it's substance as such, but also different articles, as I was saying, containing it, in particular firefighting foam, hydraulic fluids. I think should be the main focus at this time. And please keep in mind to connect with the other two POPs, PFOA and PFHX, for the common uses. And then the last one that I have here is the UPOPs inventory. So basically the focus here is to understand what is the, because this is a NIP update, we need to understand what is the trend from the previous inventory. So for example, when doing the update, usually if the previous version of the UPOPs inventory was done using one version of the guidance, and now the version of the guidance is updated, you are required to also update the baseline, the previous version, to be able to have an accurate comparison, to understand the trends when it comes to releases of POPs. And another thing that is important is, that Article 5 requires parties to do efforts and implement the BAT-BEP for different industries, facilities that are listed in Annex C. So I think that is another aspect that you can look into it. And also the legislative aspect, how this different activities releasing UPOPs are regulated, and all that, and contaminated sites as well. For example, if you have huge areas where open burning is happening, for sure those are could be qualified as potential UPOPs contaminated sites, and so on. And then, so what do you need to focus on when collecting here? So you remember that we have 10 source groups listed in the UNEP toolkit. So this is the guidance document that we are using to do an estimation of releases of unintentional POPs. So basically for each source group, you have to collect the activity rate. So information on activity data, like tons of waste burn, either in a facility or in open burning, or if we are looking at the transport sector, we are looking at the tons of different fuels used, and type of engines, and so on. So So there are different activity rates as per the 10 source groups that you need to collect. And then when it comes to, because to, how to say, to estimate the releases, you will need the activity rate, which can come from either from statistics, where you have the data in statistics, or from collecting directly from different facilities or institution, ministries, agencies that you have at the country level. So in order then to select the right emission factor, because we have a default emission factor in the guidance document, but their selection is the tricky part, because it very much depends on technology advancement at the country level. So for example, if there is, in case of incinerating of waste in a facility, if they have end of pipe how to say, end of pipe technology retaining the pollution, then the emission factor will be a lower one. If there is no, so it's very basic incineration facility, then the emission factor will be higher, therefore the emissions will be higher. So you need to know a bit more details on this technological development and updates at the country level in order to be able to select the relevant emission factors. And I think you all heard that there is always this recommendation, either from consultants or experts, that please conduct this inventory in harmonized manner with others inventory on mercury, on greenhouse gases emission, and so on. So from our side, we've done this comparison. So there are some source categories that are similar for, mercury, UPOPs, greenhouse gases, and so on. And we have marked that. Therefore, if one of these teams are collecting already these activity rates that comes from industry directly or from statistics, you don't need to do it again. You only need to connect to your other team and get these activity rates, because in 1 year these are unique, so they cannot be different activity rates for one particular year. So therefore there is a need for coordination with other inventory teams, and there is a need for you to understand which source categories are similar, to be able to retrieve that data that you also need for your inventory. Yes, so I think that is all for my first part. I hope I was not too long and the information is not too complicated. In any case, you will have your national inventory workshops. As far as I know, this is one of the first activities that you have in when conducting your NIP. So definitely you'll go more in depth for each and every POP. So this is just a brief overview for all these chemicals. And maybe just as an information, I think most of you know, other 3 chemicals were just listed at this scope. So it is methoxychlor, it is Decloran Plus, and UV328. So more will come, but I think for now we can stick to to this batch of chemicals that I introduced. And thank you.
Thank you very much, Mihaela. Okay, I think we have just finished the first version, the first session of the webinar, and it was really insightful. Thank you very much, Mihaela, for covering the main items of this topic from our previous webinar, and also thank you for reminding us about new POPs that have been added this year. And if you don't mind, we will try to invite, we will try to invite our another honorable guest speaker. He is Christopher Kanema, I hope I pronounce it correctly, from Zambia Environmental Management Agency. And he was just promoted to the panelist. Christopher, are you with us?
Yes.
Wonderful. Okay, do you have the slides or you will just speak?
I have, if I can give in the to host.
I will. Yes, sure. Please, the floor is yours, Christopher.
Are you able to see my slides?
Yes, we can see your slides, but if you could do the slideshow, it would be okay. Perfect. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you very much. I am privileged today to share the experience of Zambia in terms of the process that we've gone through for the NIP. As you might be aware, we are using this platform under component 4 of the global NIP, where we are sharing knowledge. And so in the case of Zambia, I'll just quickly go into the status in terms of the Stockholm Convention, then the NIP process, and some of the recommendations that we would put forward. Just want to mention that Zambia became a party, or we are a party to the Stockholm Convention. So we're just coming from the previous COP where we've listed some more chemicals. So we, because of being a party as an obligation, we started the new process in 2002, 2007. Then we ended up submitting our NIP, the first NIP, and then we actually had to review the NIP and update it. So the first NIP, like I mentioned, the last cycle ended in 2007, and this was mostly focusing on 12 POPs, the initial POPs. And then in 2013, we had to review and update our NIP based on the 11 new POPs which were added then, because every 2 years we are adding a new POP. So the objective for the NIP update was actually to review and update the first NIP, and then enable Zambia to fulfill its obligation under Article 7, the Stockholm Convention. Apart from that, we were also looking at developing guidelines and awareness materials to ensure that the new POPs are made known to the community and so forth. So that was the objective. We had 4 components, and the first one was to re-establish the coordinating mechanism, and then conduct inventories, and then the other part was to set up the priorities for management of the new POPs. And thereafter, in component 4, we were focusing on actually formulating the implementation plan itself. So the current implementation plan, which we are about to review and update based on the global NIP, is actually looking at where we are coming from, the first NIP, second NIP, and now the one we are currently working on. Now, looking at how the process is undertaken in Zambia, we have different phases. So phase 1 actually looks at establishing the coordination mechanism. So this is a normal process where you sign the the MOUs, you set up the coordinators, you appoint a coordinator and then set up the office, and the ZEMA being the focal point for Stockholm. We actually manage the project, and then ensuring that there's an inception workshop that brings together different stakeholders. During this workshop, that strengthen the coordination mechanism. NIP, first NIP and the second NIP was looking at industrial PCBs, and then thereafter there's an issue of training of thematic areas, the technical working groups in thematic areas, like I mentioned. Therefore, project work plan, overall project work plan, but also work plans.
Okay. It seems that Christopher has just left us, and I think that he's facing the technical issues, probably some issues with the internet connection. So if you don't mind, we will proceed, and we will be waiting for Christopher a bit. I guess he will come back soon. So if you don't mind, we will move to the Q&A session. So let me see if we have anything in the chat box. Please feel free to leave your questions. We have our guest speakers who can answer your questions. So please feel free to ask the presenters. This is a great chance when all of us are together at the same time and at the same place. So we encourage you to bring up not only questions, but your ideas, insights, and suggestions to the chat. We see that many countries actually introduced themselves, so we are actually also glad to have you today. We will still have some time for another Q&A session in the end of the webinar. And if there are no questions in the chat, okay, if there are no questions in the chat, let's see, okay. Let's do the poll before the next session. So let me initiate the poll. One moment. Okay. And I hope you can see it on the screen. Yes, I hope you can see. So this is the question. Do you know how NIP generated data and the Stockholm Convention national reporting requested POPs data are linked? So it's generally the question about the linkage between NIP and national reporting and whether you know about these linkages. So we will be waiting unless at least half of our participants vote. A little bit more. Okay, just one moment. And I can see Christopher. I can see Christopher on back to the panel. That's wonderful. Just a moment.
I'm so sorry. I was just knocked off. I don't know what happened.
It's okay. So we will just end this poll and I will give floor to you, Christopher, again. So okay. as you can see, we have 78 people, 78%, I apologize, of the audience who actually, okay, 75, 76 who we will end the poll and share the results. So 76% of our audience actually is familiar about the linkage between NIP and national reporting. I stop sharing and floor is yours, Christopher. Hope you can. Okay, and make you a co-host, and I hope you can share again. But please be mindful, we are actually running out of our time, so we have just a couple of minutes. But we are
Yes,
really
please.
happy to hear from you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Are you able to see this?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, thank you. So I was just saying that that is a bureau consisting of the thematic areas, and then phase 2 was looking at the inventories and a formulation of reports from the thematic areas and the like. So, for instance, under the PCB thematic area, those are the transformers with PCB actually containing oil. And then phase 3 was setting up the priority areas for the NIP itself. So this involved a number of issues where we have to review the legal framework and recommend a strengthening of the legal framework, and also conducting the socio-economic assessment of POPs, and then setting now the national priority areas of concern. Then the fourth one was more into formulation of the NIP itself. So the NIP is actually like it was presented in the other presentation, where you have those thematic areas and the like, industrial chemicals, which involved PFOS, PBDs, and PCBs. And then the pesticides, we were focusing more on DDT in the update, and the endosulfan, because endosulfan had just been listed under Stockholm Convention. So we are focusing on that. And then the endorsement itself required that you come to different stakeholders to look through what has been conducted in the inventory. And then this was one of the meetings where the different thematic areas were presenting, and then the endorsement was done. So in short, this is a process that we use in Zambia, and we are going to continue building on this coordination mechanism to ensure that this does not sit in isolation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very
Thank
much,
you.
Christopher. Thank you. It's indeed an insightful experience, and I believe our countries may also have questions. So please feel free to leave your questions in the chat. We will be trying to address all of them, or as much as we can, in the end of this second session. We keep monitoring the chat and we try to respond. And once again, thank you, Christopher, for sharing. We wish Zambia all the best in its endeavors and NIP update. And okay, I think we can start with our second session. Floor is yours, Mihaela.
Yes, thank you. So let me share my screen. Let me see my screen. 1 second. Let me do it again. So you let me know if you see it. I'm not able to see my screen.
We can see it, but
Okay.
not, yes, not
Okay,
able
1 second.
to.
It's really strange because okay, so this one. So it's now okay.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, I'm sorry, but you know, like I could not see the screen and move my
It's
slide.
absolutely fine.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes, so I will try to be brief just to have some time for questions. So the second part is it's about the interlinkages between the NIP and reporting. And I was happy to see that, you know, 75 of those that responded. So I've seen that around 41% of the participants responded. They know about the linkages, which is great. So, but maybe for the others that mentioned that they are not really into this, I can detail a bit. So at the UNEP level, we did this, let's say, comparison between the data that is usually generated under NIP if you are following the guidance documents and the different reporting obligations like Article 15 and all the other, like for PCB, you remember you receive an extra questionnaire from the Secretariat from time to time. For PBDE, the same when it comes to the evaluation for the need for the exemption, that is for PBDE on recycling, on DDT, again for the need to use it for as a vector control, PFOS and unintentional POPs, which is basically part of Article 15 report, but they are considered as separate reporting obligation. So based on this assessment, we end up with concluding that 90% of the data of the reporting data are covered by the NIP generated data, which I think it's great, you know, because in most of the countries, the NIP process, NIP update process and review process is the only one that is providing the countries with updated data. They don't have a parallel process, a separate process to do these updates maybe more often every year or something like that. So the NIP is basically the main vehicle that brings the updated data that could also be captured into the reporting. Therefore, also we looked across different MEAs and to do a comparison of qualitative versus quantitative data to be reported under the MEAs. And if you look here, so in red is the quantitative one and in green is the qualitative data. So if you look of the particular case of the Stockholm Convention, you will see that the qualitative data prevails, right, compared to the quantitative data. So basically, we don't have any reason to say we didn't report because we had no data. I mean, qualitative one is the easiest one to get at the country level. So at least if we are able to provide that, it's still something when it comes to reporting. Because we always hear complaints that we have no data to report and so on. So the quantitative one is only 20%. Comparative with Montreal Protocol, where you see that almost 100% of data is quantitative one, and looking at other Basel and Rotterdam and Minamata, you know, also the qualitative one prevails. So I think we have no excuse of not sending these reports to the Secretariat. They don't need to be perfect, but I think the most important is for us to report with whatever you know available information we have for a particular period. And then what we also put together also to support countries, you know, to understand better this interlinkages. We made this so-called correspondence table. So it's a table where on one side we added all the, for example, Article 15 reporting obligations per different questions in the, we have a questionnaire for that, and we translated that in this Excel, and then we matched this with different NIP sections where data it should be available. Of course, it's not always the case because maybe you didn't manage to retrieve it at the national level, but just to have this overview, which what question or information requested in the Article 15 match which section in the NIP, and if there is no match, for example, because I said that 90% is covered, for the rest, where could be those where you can find potential sources of information to look into it and address. And this is a simple table, but of course we are very happy to circulate with the parties, with the countries that are in our project, and to use it for the have an easy job when it comes in matching these two obligations. And then from this analysis that I told you, we draw different conclusions. So when it comes to overlaps, so information requested to be reported under Article 15 and other reporting obligation overlap to a large extent, as I said, with the data generated under NIP, which I think it's great. But we still have some remaining gaps. So sometimes it's limited level of detail of NIP generated data compared with the one that it is requested to be reported, or no NIP generated data, or the lack of correlation with different reporting obligations. And now if we go more in depth, you have here like a quick brief snapshot. So NIPS versus reporting. So please note that this was done in 2018. So we only related to the POPs listed by that date. That's why you only see this one here in the analysis. So when we look NIP versus reporting, so in the NIP we have sometimes limited level of detail compared with what is requested by reporting. And when it comes to DDT, it's the same. So reporting requests us more data than we generally collect in the NIP, and same with PFOS. And then if we look what is requested, reporting versus NIP. So reporting questionnaire requests, for example, less information on POP-PBDE than you put in your NIP. So you generate data in the NIP, but you are not requested to report it. Of course, this links with different obligations under the convention, but still, I think, in my opinion, there should be somewhere a place to add additional data, because you are generating this anyway into your NIP process. And the same is the case with HBCD and PFOS. So sometimes in the NIP there is more data than it is requested to be reported. And then here are very showcasing the detail, the NIP gaps when it comes to PCB. So I will not go each and every one. I think you will have this and you will look into it, but I think it's something that you, in this process of NIP update, you should consider, right? So now you are aware of it, and you should consider when collecting the data as to be able afterwards to also do your reporting under Article 15. So same I detail here for DDT. So just look into it and see what additional data is needed for reporting, and see how much you can capture during the NIP update and the inventory process. And same with PFOS. So then if it is to conclude, so I must highlight that, for example, even though sometimes we are following very closely the guidance documents for NIP development and update and inventories, the few limitations still exist. So are these data gaps that I was just mentioning, and these limitations are of various, internal. So could be of internal scope, like there is a lack of reporting mechanisms, right? At the national level, there is no interconnection between reporting team and NIP team, but also of external scope, in the sense that we see that the reporting formats are not streamlined as they should be, and there is a lack of coordination and coherence between what is requested to be reported and what we are guided to collect through the guidance inventory document. So I think there are few elements that are not in our hands. It's either for the secretariat or for sometimes the COP to decide to better streamline this. Therefore, in this context, the additional efforts from parties are needed to collect and generate the data to comply with the reporting. And then how to address this? So I think we need this integrative approach. So once we collect data and information at the national level, so in our case through the NIP, it should serve for multiple purposes. So not only for the NIP, but also for reporting, for other internal uses, for information purposes and so on. But also there is, as I was mentioning, need to streamline and harmonizing the reporting formats, and also at the national level, the mechanism for NIP update and reporting. As I said, there are two teams sometimes that are not talking to each other, and that sometimes, most of the time, is a problem. And also the reporting time schedule. We know that we have different time schedules for different reports, which is not very useful and determines a very high administrative burden at the national level, because they come at different time frames. Okay, so then just for you to understand the connection, so I will present the toolkit. I think some of you already know this because I think I introduced it during the inception, but for those that were not present, or I will present a bit in more detail. So in order to address this, shortcomings when it comes to a structural template for NIP, the link to the reporting and so on, and following different COP mandates, we have, through a Jeff project, we have developed this integrated electronic toolkit. And now I will give you some insights on it, just to move to main subject and gain some time. So the toolkit basically will be deployed with the BRS Secretariat starting, end of June. And it will have two different type of interfaces, a public one and a private one. And for the private one, what is envisaged is that parties to the Stockholm Convention will receive login credentials for official contact point, national focal points, similar as you have for the electronic reporting system, if you remember. So under Article 15, you have this login credentials. So you'll have this to log in and, for example, use different modules internally, like NIP submission module and so on, without being seen publicly. So some of information will be available publicly available. Some other will only be in your private space until you decide to make it public. And then maybe on the structure, so I will repeat this. We have 4 modules: NIP submission module, POPs inventory module, queries module, and guidance module. Different modules have different functions, and I will go each and every one to describe. So NIP submission module is the one that will allow you to electronically submit your NIP, when this toolkit will enter in full use. So far, I mean, according to the recent COP mandate, we are still to, parties are still to test it and provide comments, and then for the secretariat to address these comments and further improve. So this allows parties to organize the data in a template for the initial NIP. Is nothing new. It's the same structure that is recommended by the guidance documents. It has, so the template takes into account all the standard elements of the NIP presented in this modular approach, and ensures sufficient flexibility, when it comes to addressing the national context. So, for example, you have different replies option in the templates that are placed in the sections of the NIP. So, for example, when data is not available or you cannot retrieve it, you have a functionality there allowing you to mark that, right? But also was developed in such a way that will allow afterwards an easier update from the BRS side, because convention is dynamic. Always we add new chemicals, then therefore in the NIP we need to add new chapters and so on. So as it is structured now, it will allow you to do that. So this module has different, so it has placeholder for narrative text, for example, when you need to do qualitative type of description of information, but also templates for quantitative data. So already predefined templates for you to select from or input quantitative data. And also it has, you will see here these red buttons that are in each and every section preceding this different tables, where there is an explicit link to the different reporting obligations. So you will know, if I complete this table, this information is very much relevant for that table in the reporting format. So you will know for sure how they are linked. And then we have the POPs inventory module. So this has 2 parts. So it's like part A, where we basically summarize all the guidance documents. We heard working with different countries that is always difficult to read such long guidance documents and to understand what is our focus out of what we are reading, right? So what we put here is a very short and concise summary on those elements where you can focus. Of course, you can always go back to the longer document and check it and so on. So you have all these summaries here for different POPs. And then we have a part B. So part B, it's made of entry data forms. So it's, how to say, a template for your inventory reports. You remember that after you conduct each and every inventory at the NIP, during the NIP process, you need to produce an inventory report. And most of the time we, there is still a struggle among parties. What should I capture in my inventory report, and out of the inventory report, what should I transfer to the NIP? So there always struggle and misunderstanding about that. So then we put in place such a template for your inventory reports, and we didn't do it like randomly. We did a specific connection between the data that needs to go from your inventory report to the NIP, right? So it's a summary. So inventory report is an extended one with granular data, more granular data, disaggregated data at the national level, which you don't want to lose. You want to have it saved somewhere to use it next time. So therefore, this format helps you very much. And what we are planning to do through this NIP Global project is to further develop this format to have a digitization of this POPs inventory. So for you not to lose the data, because usually you collect and by the next time you start the update, you lose it. So we plan to go more in depth and provide more templates for you to input the data in this inventory reporting format. And then the fourth module is guidance module. Is nothing new, just that we put together all the guidance documents relevant for NIP update in one place. Because now if you look on the BRS side, they are all over and it's sometimes very difficult to reach them and then identify them on the page. So now you'll have everything in one place. And no, so that was the third. So this is the fourth, sorry. The fourth module is queries module. So this will allow you to, retrieve data from the database. So for now, this is the query module will address mainly the NIP database. So once countries will start to submit their data, the NIP electronically, then the database become populated and you can you'll be able to retrieve quantitative information. So we have two types of querying the data. So predefined queries, so you have a list of those queries that relates to the quantitative data, or predefined queries, but also we'll have free search type of querying the system that will allow you to retrieve qualitative information. And now functionalities. So we have different functionalities here. I try to showcase some. So first of all, you will be able, for example, so I'm talking now about the submission module and its functionality. So you will be able to download the Word version in different languages of this module. So this will allow you to work offline because you all know in the NIP, you need to consult with various authorities, ministries. So it's a multi-stakeholder process. So you need to be able to have this, circulate the template and get the right information from different authorities and then compiled and afterwards submit it online. And then each page, it has different buttons, like here there is an entire bar for you to customize your text, to add links, to add photos. Then you have a save button, go to previous section, next section. Then here, as I told you, you have a button where if you click on it, you will see the different linkages with the reporting obligations, not only Article 15, but also the others. You have, the possibility to create a new template, like, for example, when you do it first time, you need to have a new template. But then when you, for example, update your previous NIP, you can clone the initial version sent and just focus on updating those sections that need update, so you don't need to rewrite again each and every section. To export to Word, to delete, to submit. And then yes, this is what I was talking about, the bar that will allow you to customize your text. Then when it comes to POPs inventory module, again, in this one, you are able to download the Word version of it. So for now, it's only available in English, but for future, we are planning to go in other languages. And again, you have create a new version, edit, clone, delete, submit. and the same functionality with the bar here, and then save button and so on. And now a few quick ones on benefits. So there are several. So when we are looking at NIP and inventories, it will allow online transmission and storage when it comes to detailed inventory reports. It offers this predefined structure, including using it offline. The pre-filled one, I mean, from the past submissions, could be reused during the update. Clear overview of data needs, which I think is quite important in the process of NIP, to have clear overview from the beginning. And then when it comes to reporting, so it harmonizes with NIP. If it will ensure 100% coverage of reporting obligation if you are following the structure of the NIPs, and the interlinkage, as I showed, they are highlighted, and where and which data corresponds to which reporting obligation. And the guidance, then we have all the guidance documents, the summaries, the links to the longer ones, and all the guidance on NIP development and reporting in one place. On data management system, so allows you to store the NIP data, to store the POPs inventory data, and to extract data, which again, there are, for me, important functionalities. Now, I have 3 more slides, so I'll be fast. So when it comes to methodologies available, so here you have just a snapshot of what exists when it comes to the NIP development and review guidances. You have it on the BRS webpage. So you have several. I think what we are following now is number 4, so guidance for developing the NIP. So this was the main one, based on which we developed the toolkit as well. But you have others, socioeconomic, which is also part of the work for the NIP update, and calculation of action plan costs. And then, of course, all the inventory guidance documents. This I will not go into detail. I gave you few details today about different POPs. So these are there. And I think, as I said, at the national level, you will go more in depth and approach each and every method to inventorize the POPs. And then I think, so this, what you see here are the additional methodologies report that we developed under component 1 and 2. And basically this will be subject to future webinars, but just to give you some brief idea what they are talking about. So we have a sectoral guidance for POPs inventories. So you have seen from what I presented that some POPs could be addressed per different sectors. So we put together one such guidance where we focus on 3 sectors for now: electric and electronics, transport and construction, and mainly looking at brominated fermenters, but also you will see when we'll present this that there are links with other POPs that are relevant for the 3 sectors. So the objective of this guidance is to facilitate a sectoral assessment of POPs inventories, and that information on gathering of data is better coordinated. So I think that is the main thing. Then we have a methodology for strengthening the collaboration with national statistical offices to address the data gaps. And here we include information and strategies on strengthening the collaboration with the statistical offices and other responsible institutions to address these gaps. And we included in recommendation on strengthening the dialogue with these offices, but also we will show how you can use different international databases for retrieving the data. So yeah, this is also one of those that are very important and not really tackled by the BRS so far. And then we have short guidance on quality assurance, quality control when it comes to POPs data validation. So I think you remember that we have a step in this NIP update process related to managing and evaluating the data. So therefore, such a quality assurance, quality control system is very much needed, and it was not done so far for POPs. So we'll share insights how you can put in place and conduct such validation when it comes to POPs. And then we have a global report on production, use, and trade of newly listed POPs and how to access international database and statistics. And here, this focuses on current and historical production and major uses, as well as information on current trade. So, for example, I think for inventory purpose management and control, it is necessary for you to know if a POP is still currently produced or trade, because we have seen major, inaccuracy, inaccurate data in the inventories, like parties were estimating producing or using POPs or article containing POPs more than they were, in such high quantities that were above the amounts that were produced globally. So imagine that. So I think you have to have a better understanding which of them are still produced, used, and then put this in the perspective of your national context. So that is in a nutshell. As I said, we will come back with a new webinar dealing with each and every of these guidance documents. So we'll go for details. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mihaela. We deeply value your time and efforts to share your knowledge and expertise with the project countries, and we believe our audience derived much from today's webinar. I would like to one more time let you know that we record not only the webinar, but also the questions and answers, and we will be posting them on Green Forum. So we still have a minute, and please feel free to drop your question here in the chat or go to Green Forum and leave your question there, and we will definitely make sure to answer and come back to you with a link if you are still not a user of Green Forum, or if you are still not utilizing our platform, a knowledge platform. So we will be sharing the links in the chat once again. So please explore and join us. And I think it's the time is up, and we'll be closing our webinar. And before we have a round of closing remarks, just once again, let us express our deep gratitude to the speakers. Thank you very much to the presenters from Zambia. Thank you very much, Christopher. We hope it's not the last time we see you on the panel. And of course, million thanks to Mihaela. This is a huge work, and we deeply appreciate it. Many thanks to our regional centers who supported us on every webinar, and of course to our project countries. We love our project countries and believe we'll have more interaction in this and following years. So finally, thank you so much to our interpreters who provided us with outstanding simultaneous interpretation into 3 languages last hour and a half. And now we would like to give the floor to each of our speakers and presenters for closing remarks. Thank you very much. So maybe
Yes, I can start too, if you want. So I will be brief. Thank you so much to the GGKP team. You are great as always, and great. You organize everything perfectly. So for us to be able to interact. So thank you so much, and to all the participants, and also to Chris. Hi, Chris. Nice to hear you today and learn from your experience. We have interacted the last two weeks at COP, so it's nice to hear from you and see you active here in our context, so in the webinar. So thank you so much to all of you for being here.
Thank you. And maybe Melanie and Chris.
Thanks, Anastasia, and thanks, Mihaela, very much for your insightful presentations. I think they're very useful, and it's going to be wonderful to have these as a living resource, essentially, as these webinars will be available online on our knowledge management platform, the NIP update page, and on the Green Forum. And Anastasia has very cleverly, I believe, worked out how to make sure that we can have the Russian version and the English version and the French versions all separate and available. So obviously these are a great resource to our national focal points, but also to your national coordinating committees on the on your NIP update project. So please do share them, because we think they could be of great benefit to you. And thank you everyone for your time today. And Chris, I've not met you before, but thank you so much for sharing. It was wonderful to hear your experience, and to the countries, and thank you for your time, and thank you the interpreters for your wonderful service. We appreciate it. And Anastasia, great moderating. Back to you.
Thank you so much. This is Chris. I do appreciate, and also the tools that are being made available are a good resource to us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Christopher. We were honored to have you today. So thank you very much, everyone, for another great webinar. And we'll soon announce the date for our next event. So not saying goodbye, but see you soon. So thank you for your participation, and have a nice day.